Welcome to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. It's good to have you with us again. Today we're diving into a topic that feels both personal and a bit philosophical.
Yeah, definitely one that makes you think. We're calling this episode Language as a Mirror, What English Reflects Back to You.
It sounds poetic, right? But it's actually something every language learner experiences without always realizing it. The way you use English doesn't just show how much you've learned, it often shows who you are becoming through the process.
Exactly. Because when you learn a new language, especially one like English that's used in so many cultures and situations, you start noticing new parts of yourself. Sometimes you become more confident in English than in your own language. Or more expressive. Or even more quiet.
And it's not just about grammar or pronunciation. It's about personality. Behavior. Choices. Like, when someone says, "I feel like a different person when I speak English," I think that's real.
Absolutely. I've heard that a lot. People say they are more open, more playful, more daring in English. Or on the flip side, more cautious, more formal. And it makes you wonder, are you changing? Or is English just showing you a different angle of yourself?
That's what makes this topic so interesting. Because language doesn't just sit in your mouth. It passes through your emotions, your values, even your memories.
And English, for many learners, is the first second language that lets them see themselves from the outside. It's like holding up a mirror, but the reflection is in another voice.
It's also in the choices you make. The phrases you use. The things you feel comfortable saying, or avoiding. That says a lot about your background, your identity, and even your past experiences.
Yeah, like someone who always uses very polite English might be reflecting their desire to be accepted or respected. And someone who experiments with slang might be expressing a side of themselves they can't show in their native language.
Language brings freedom, but it also brings filters. And sometimes, what English reflects back to you depends on how you feel about yourself when you're speaking it.
So today, we're going to explore how learning English is not just about communication. It's also about self-awareness. About identity. About growth. Because maybe the version of you that speaks English is just as real as the one that speaks your first language.
And maybe even more real in some situations. I mean, think about it. If someone finds it easier to say, "I'm proud of myself," in English than in their native language, that's not just about vocabulary. That's about emotion. That's about comfort.
Yes, and sometimes English gives people emotional distance. Like, they can say something hard or personal in English that they struggle to say in their first language. It doesn't feel as raw, or maybe it feels safer.
It's like creating a buffer between the feeling and the speaker. And that space can give you the courage to express things you've held back in your own language.
It also shows how flexible English can be. For some people, it becomes a way to rewrite parts of their story. To try on new identities, speak with a different tone, or even set new boundaries.
I've heard people say they feel more assertive in English. Like they can say no more easily, or speak their mind without second guessing.
Which is fascinating, because it challenges the idea that your native language is the most authentic version of you. What if English helps you become a more honest version of yourself?
Or a more balanced one. Because maybe your first language comes with cultural habits, like avoiding directness or hiding emotions, and English helps loosen that.
And that goes both ways. Some learners become more reserved in English, especially at the beginning. They don't feel like they can express themselves fully yet, so they play it safe.
Yeah, and it's easy to confuse that with personality. Someone might seem shy in English but be super outgoing in their own language. The language barrier becomes a personality filter.
Which is why it's important not to judge someone's personality too quickly when they're speaking a second language. You might only be seeing a tiny part of who they are.
Exactly. And that's where English becomes a mirror. It shows you how much you're willing to share, how much you trust yourself, and how much space you're giving to your own voice.
It's not just about fluency, it's about confidence. And that confidence doesn't always come from mastering grammar. Sometimes it comes from letting go of who you think you're supposed to be when you speak.
And allowing the language to show you something new. Like, maybe in English, you discover that you're more playful. Or more patient. Or more curious.
It's like meeting a version of yourself you didn't know existed. And over time, that version becomes less of a stranger and more of a friend.
And I think that's what makes learning English such a personal journey. It's not just about understanding others, it's also about understanding yourself through a different lens.
And the more you use it, the clearer the reflection becomes. At first, it might feel foggy, like you're not quite sure who you are in English. But then one day, you catch yourself saying something and think, yeah, that sounds like me.
That moment is everything. When you no longer feel like you're performing in English, you're just being. That's when the mirror becomes clear.
And when that happens, it's not just a language milestone. It's a life milestone. Because it means you've stopped trying to sound like someone else and started sounding like yourself in English.
And that's powerful. Because so many learners get stuck trying to imitate accents, copy native speakers, or fit into a certain mold. But real growth starts when you bring your own voice into the language.
Right? Your stories, your opinions, your sense of humor, your way of expressing love or frustration. That's the version of English that reflects you, not just the textbook version.
And I think that's why English becomes such a personal tool for many learners. Because once you stop worrying about sounding correct and you start sounding real, the connection deepens.
And you start hearing yourself differently. Like, I didn't translate that, I just said it. Or, that really felt like my thought, not a memorized sentence.
That's when English becomes part of your identity, not something outside of you, but something that carries your truth. And that truth might sound different in English than in your first language. And that's okay.
It's more than okay. It's one of the gifts of learning a new language. You get to explore your mind from another angle. Sometimes you learn things about yourself that you never noticed before.
Yeah, like how you react under pressure. Or how you explain your beliefs. Or how your tone changes depending on who you're talking to. The mirror of language shows all of that.
And what I find really interesting is how some people become emotionally attached to English because of what it's allowed them to say. It becomes a space where they feel safe, understood, or even reborn.
That's so true. Especially for people who've used English to move to a new country, build a new life, or start over. For them, English isn't just a language, it's a lifeline.
And for others, it might be their creative space. The language they write poetry in, or journal in, or sing in. And all of that reflects something deeper than grammar or pronunciation.
Because when you create in English, whether it's writing, speaking, or even thinking, you're not just using the language, you're shaping a new version of your reality.
It becomes part of your mental landscape. Like a second home in your mind, where you can express different shades of who you are.
And it's not about replacing your first language. It's about expanding. Becoming more layered. More open. More aware.
Exactly. Language doesn't take anything away from you, it adds. It gives you more tools, more colors, more mirrors.
And the more you explore that reflection, the more comfortable you become with the complexity of who you are, bilingual, multilingual, growing, changing.
It's not a straight line. You'll have moments where English feels like a perfect fit, and others where it doesn't. But that's okay. That's part of what the mirror shows you too.
Your doubts. Your progress. Your voice, even when it's shaky. And that's what makes it real.
And I think it's in those shaky moments that real growth happens. When you're not sure if you said it the right way, but you said it anyway. That's when you start to trust yourself more.
And trusting yourself in a second language is a big deal. Because you're not just trusting your memory, you're trusting your instincts, your rhythm, your voice.
It's a completely different type of confidence. Not loud or perfect, but quiet and honest. Like, this is how I say it today. Maybe tomorrow it'll be smoother. But for now, this is me.
And the mirror reflects that honestly. Not just what you've learned, but what you're still working through. Your fears, your habits, even the words you avoid.
That's such an interesting point, the words we avoid. Sometimes we don't realize how much we hold back because of fear. Fear of mispronouncing, of sounding strange, or being misunderstood.
Or even fear of being seen in a certain way. Some people won't use certain phrases because they feel too casual or too emotional. But that says something, doesn't it?
It really does. It reveals not just your relationship with the language, but your relationship with expression itself. How much space you give yourself to feel seen, even in a second language.
And that's something people don't talk about enough. Language isn't just what we say. It's what we allow ourselves to say. And that's deeply personal.
I think that's why English, for many learners, becomes a place of emotional discovery. You start to realize which parts of yourself feel free, and which parts are still hiding.
And sometimes the act of speaking, even imperfectly, is a kind of self-acceptance. You stop chasing perfection and start chasing connection.
Exactly. Because no one remembers flawless grammar. They remember honesty, emotion, personality. And all of that can be reflected through English, even if you still make mistakes.
And often, it's in the mistakes that your real voice comes through. The words you choose, the way you rearrange things, the little phrases you repeat, those are all part of your reflection.
That's the beauty of it. Your English doesn't have to sound like anyone else's. It's shaped by your journey, your thoughts, your life.
And over time, it becomes yours. Not just a skill, but a space. A space where you get to hear yourself in a new way.
And when you listen closely, you realize that English isn't just showing you what you know. It's showing you what you believe, what you care about, and how much you've grown.
Sometimes, people think their English isn't good enough because it doesn't sound like a native speaker. But what if the way you speak English is already reflecting something even more powerful, your resilience, your progress, your unique perspective?
Yes. I mean, your accent, your pauses, your grammar slips, they are not flaws. They are parts of your story. They tell people, hey, I've worked for this. I've stretched my brain and pushed through awkward moments, just to be able to talk to you.
That's a mirror most people don't realize they are looking into. Like, English starts to show you what you've been willing to do to grow. It reflects effort. And honestly, it reflects courage.
And vulnerability, too. Because speaking a language that's not your first feels a lot like standing on a stage without a script. You don't always know the exact right words, but you try anyway. And that shows strength.
It does. And I think it also shows what you value. Some people use English mostly for work or study. Others use it to connect with friends or express emotions they find hard to say in their first language. That choice tells us something.
Exactly. Like, if someone only uses English to talk about their dreams or plans, maybe it's because English feels like the language of their future. And if someone uses it to write their thoughts, maybe it's because English gives them distance, a way to see things more clearly.
That's such a good point. English can become the language of clarity. Or even a space of emotional safety. Because sometimes, it's easier to be honest in a language that doesn't carry the same weight of your past.
Yes. I've heard people say they can express sadness more easily in English, because it doesn't hit as hard as saying it in their mother tongue. There's a kind of buffer there. Like emotional breathing room.
And that room lets people explore who they are without feeling too exposed. It's kind of amazing how language can give you that space, not just to communicate, but to reflect and reframe how you feel.
So when you look at your English, don't just ask, is this correct? Ask, what is this saying about me today? What is this showing me about how I think, feel, and grow?
Because language is more than vocabulary and rules. It's a lens. And what you see through it is sometimes more about your inner world than the outside one.
And when that happens, when you start to hear your real self in English, not just your memorized self, it changes the way you see learning. It becomes less about mastering and more about understanding.
Exactly. You're not just improving your English. You're deepening your awareness. You're learning how your voice moves through a new system and still stays yours.
That's why it's such a powerful journey. Because you come into English thinking you're just learning how to speak. But really, you're learning how to listen to yourself.
So if you're someone who sometimes doubts your English, or wonders if you're saying things the right way, maybe step back and ask what your English is actually showing you. Because it might be reflecting something really beautiful.
Like your strength, your creativity, or even your willingness to grow beyond your comfort zone. And that's something to be proud of, not just as a learner, but as a person.
Thanks for spending your time with us today. We hope this gave you a new way to think about your relationship with English, less about rules, more about reflection.
We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep learning, stay kind to yourself, and remember, your English is already telling a powerful story.
Take care.